Warden Krell had been running the detention center on Trading Station Epsilon 9 for nearly 20 years. In that time, he'd processed thousands of inmates from dozens of different species. Humans, Trevany, Vulcan, even a few of the crystalline Shardborn. The routine never changed. Bring them in, run the blood scan, check for toxins and diseases, log their genetic markers, and assign them to a cell block. Simple. Predictable. Boring, even. That's exactly how it was supposed to go with the human in Cell 47. Jake Thompson. 28 years old, brown hair, average build, nothing special about him at all. He'd been arrested after starting a fight in one of the station's lower deck bars. According to the report, he'd punched a Vulcan trader who was cheating at cards. The Vulcan had 3 friends. Jake had a black eye and a split lip to show for his sense of justice. Standard drunk and disorderly. Krell had seen 100 cases just like it. Let's get this over with, Krell muttered to his assistant, a young officer named Vex. Run the standard blood panel. Jake sat on the examination table, still wearing the orange detention jumpsuit they'd given him. He looked tired and annoyed, but not particularly worried. How long is this going to take? I've got a shuttle to catch tomorrow. You'll catch it when we say you can catch it, Vex replied, pressing the scanner against Jake's arm. The device hummed as it drew a small sample and began its analysis. Krell barely looked up from his datapad. He was already filling out the forms. Human male, no priors in the system, likely a fine and release within 24 hours. Easy paperwork. He could probably finish processing before his lunch break. Then the scanner made a sound he'd never heard before. It wasn't the usual beep that meant the analysis was complete. It was more like a chime, musical, almost ceremonial. Krell's 4 eyes looked up from his datapad. Vex was staring at the scanner like it had just grown legs. What's wrong with it? Krell asked. I don't know, sir. It's never done this before. Then the scanner spoke. Not in the flat, computerized voice that occasionally announced errors. This was different. The voice was smooth, formal, respectful. It spoke in perfect galactic common, the trade language used across 1,000 worlds. Noble blood detected. Genetic authority recognized. Release this individual immediately. Krell's datapad clattered to the floor. In 20 years of running blood scans, thousands upon thousands of tests, scanners did not talk. They beeped. They displayed numbers on screens. They showed red or green indicators. They did not speak in complete sentences, and they certainly didn't use words like noble and authority. Jake looked just as confused as everyone else. What just happened? Run it again, Krell ordered, picking up his datapad with shaking hands. There must be a malfunction. Vex reset the scanner and pressed it against Jake's arm a second time. The device hummed, analyzing the blood sample. The same musical chime rang out. But this time, the voice was different. Louder. More insistent. And it didn't just speak in galactic common, it cycled through a dozen languages, some of which Krell didn't even recognize. Then it settled back into common, but the tone had changed. It wasn't just respectful anymore. It was reverent, almost worshipful. Warning. You are currently detaining the genetic heir to the first Concordat. Continued imprisonment constitutes an act of war against the founder species. This individual must be addressed with proper titles. Release him immediately and render appropriate honors. The room went silent. Vex dropped the scanner. It clattered on the metal floor, still speaking. Genetic markers confirmed. Royal bloodline verified. Release him. Release him now. Krell felt his carapace going cold. The first Concordat. Every schoolchild in the galaxy learned about them in history class. They were the ancient rulers, the civilization that had built everything. The jump gates that connected star systems. The communication relays. The massive space stations. Everything that made modern galactic civilization possible had been constructed by the first Concordat over 10,000 years ago. Then they'd vanished. Every single member of the royal family, gone in a single night. The empire had collapsed within a century. No one knew where they'd gone or what had happened to them. It was the greatest mystery in galactic history. And now a blood scanner was claiming that this random human, this guy who got into bar fights over card games, was their heir. This is impossible, Krell said, but his voice shook. The first Concordat disappeared 10,000 years ago. Humans didn't even have space travel back then. Your species only joined the galactic community 200 years ago. Jake held up his hands. Look, I don't know what's wrong with your machine, but I'm nobody special. I work in cargo logistics. My dad fixes aircars back on Earth. My mom runs a bakery. We're completely ordinary people. Krell ran the test again. And again. And again. Each time, the scanner became more insistent. On the fifth attempt, something new happened. Every screen in the examination room flickered. Text appeared, overriding whatever had been displayed before. Genetic authority confirmed. Administrative override activated. Security protocols suspended for this individual. All systems defaulting to genetic command structure. Vex backed away from the examination table, his scales turning pale. Sir, I think we need to call the station commander. Right now. Krell was already reaching for the communication panel, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Because he understood what this meant. The first Concordat hadn't just built the galaxy's infrastructure. They'd coded it. Programmed it. And apparently, they'd left something buried in every system, something that recognized their genetic authority. Something that had just woken up after 10,000 years. Within 6 hours of Jake's blood test, Trading Station Epsilon 9 had descended into complete chaos. It started small. The door to Jake's holding cell unlocked on its own. When guards tried to resecure it, the lock refused to engage. They tried 3 different override codes. Nothing worked. The security system simply ignored their commands. A message appeared on their control panel: cannot detain individual with genetic authority clearance. Then it got worse. Every door in the detention wing opened simultaneously. Not just Jake's cell, every single door in that entire section of the station. Confused inmates stumbled out into the corridors, unsure whether this was a riot, a rescue attempt, or some kind of technical glitch. Guards rushed to contain the situation, but half the security systems wouldn't respond to their commands anymore. Commander Brett Hayes, the senior human military liaison on the station, was in his office when his computer screen went black. Then text appeared, letter by letter, like someone was typing it in real time: genetic authority detected on station. All systems prioritizing protection of royal bloodline. Please direct security personnel to render appropriate honors. Brett stared at the screen. What in the actual hell? He tried to override it. The computer locked him out of his own system. In the station's central control room, Warden Krell was having an even worse day. Every screen showed the same message. The station's artificial intelligence, which normally only spoke when directly addressed, had started making announcements over the public address system. Attention all station personnel. Royal air present. Adjust protocols accordingly. Any action that may endanger the air will be met with automatic defensive response. Shut it off. Krell shouted at his technicians. We're trying, sir. It's not responding to any of our commands. One of the technicians, a nervous Trevany female named Sella, pointed at her screen with a trembling claw. Sir, look at this. The weapons grid just went into autonomous mode. And it's realigning. Krell looked at the tactical display. Every defensive weapon on the station, plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy shields, was repositioning. They were all pointing away from the detention wing, creating a protective perimeter around Jake's location. Test it, Krell ordered. Target something in that sector. Anything harmless. Sella tried to lock targeting sensors onto an empty storage room 3 corridors away from Jake's cell. The system refused. A message appeared: cannot target area within protection radius of genetic authority. How big is the protection radius? Krell asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. According to this, the entire detention wing, sir. Nothing can be targeted anywhere near him. Then the station's AI spoke again, but this time it addressed someone specific. Your Majesty, would you like me to adjust environmental controls for your comfort? Current temperature is standard for multi-species habitation, but I can modify your quarters to Earth normal specifications. In his cell, or rather, his unlocked room, since he could apparently leave whenever he wanted, Jake sat on the bunk with his head in his hands. This is insane. I'm not a king. I'm not anyone's Majesty. I deliver cargo containers for a living. A guard stood nervously at the open doorway. Not to keep Jake in, but because Warden Krell had ordered someone to stay with him. For his protection. Or maybe for everyone else's protection. No one was quite sure anymore. That's when Dr. Rachel Bennett arrived. She was a human xenohistorian who'd been working in the station's research library, cataloging ancient artifacts from dead civilizations. She was one of maybe 20 humans on a station that housed 15,000 beings from 40 different species. She'd been pulled from her work and escorted to the emergency council meeting by armed guards who looked absolutely terrified. The council chamber was packed. Station Commander Vrel, Warden Krell, Commander Hayes, representatives from a dozen different species, and a collection of very worried security officers. Everyone started talking at once when Rachel entered. Quiet. Commander Vrel's voice boomed across the chamber. She was a Canthari, a species that looked vaguely like an upright lizard the size of a small bear. Her scales were flushed dark purple, which Rachel knew meant she was stressed. Dr. Bennett, you're the expert on the first Concordat. Explain what's happening. Rachel set her data tablet on the conference table. Her hands were shaking slightly. She'd spent her entire career studying the first Concordat, the ancient civilization that every modern historian obsessed over. They'd built wonders that nobody could replicate. Then they'd vanished, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. And now, apparently, one of their descendants was sitting in a holding cell down the corridor. The first Concordat ruled the galaxy about 10,000 years ago, Rachel began. They were the most technologically advanced civilization we've ever discovered. Everything we use today, jump gates, communication relays, energy generation systems, even the fundamental architecture of most space stations, is based on their designs. We haven't built anything truly new. We've just been maintaining and copying what they left behind. We know the history, Krell interrupted. What we need to know is why the station thinks a random human is their heir. Rachel pulled up a holographic display showing genetic charts. The first Concordat didn't die out. They left. There's a historical record. I've translated it myself from the original ruins on Kepler 442b. The entire royal family and their closest attendants evacuated in a single night. Thousands of people, gone. The records called it the Great Departure. But they never said where they went. Commander Hayes leaned forward. You're saying they went to Earth? It's the only explanation that makes sense. 10,000 years ago, Earth was barely in the Bronze Age. Primitive humans, no space travel, completely isolated. It would have been the perfect hiding place. They could have integrated with the local population, lived normal lives, had children. After a few generations, they would have just been human. But why? Asked Commander Vrel. Why would the rulers of the galaxy abandon everything? Rachel switched the display to show ancient text, with a translation scrolling beneath it. I found this in the ruins last year. It's from the final transmission of the royal palace before they left. It says, we have become what we feared. Power without wisdom. Authority without humility. We leave not in defeat, but in hope, that our children's children might learn what we forgot. The room went silent. The news spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within 3 hours of Jake's blood test, encrypted messages were bouncing across the galaxy through the Jumpgate network. Within 6 hours, every major government had received reports. Within 12 hours, it was on the news feeds of 1,000 worlds. The heir to the first Concordat had been found. And he was human. By the next morning, Jake woke up in what used to be his holding cell, but now looked more like a luxury hotel suite. Someone had brought in an actual bed, Earth-style furniture, and what appeared to be a food synthesizer programmed with human meals. The station's AI had apparently decided that a royal heir shouldn't sleep on a metal bunk. Good morning, Your Majesty, the AI said cheerfully. I've prepared a breakfast selection based on common Earth preferences. Would you prefer coffee or tea? Stop calling me that, Jake muttered, but the AI either didn't hear or didn't care. When he looked out the window, his stomach dropped. The space around Trading Station Epsilon 9 was packed with ships. Not dozens, hundreds. Sleek diplomatic vessels, massive military cruisers, small fast attack craft, and ships of designs he'd never seen before. They hung in space like a swarm of metal insects, all of them focused on the station. On him. Commander Hayes appeared at his door with a security escort. We need to move you to a secure conference room. Delegations are arriving, and they all want to meet you. Delegations. Jake pulled on his shoes. How many are we talking about? Last count, representatives from 47 different governments. And more are coming. The conference room was chaos. Long tables had been set up, and they were packed with aliens of every description. Some Jake recognized from his time working cargo routes. Others were completely unfamiliar. They were all talking, some in Galactic Common, others in languages that the translation devices struggled to keep up with. A tall, elegant Trevany in flowing robes stood and bowed deeply when Jake entered. Your Majesty, The Trevany Empire wishes to pledge our eternal loyalty to the rightful heir of the first Concordat. We bring gifts and... I'm not a king, Jake interrupted, but the Trevany kept talking as if he hadn't spoken. A squat, heavily armored Vulcan on the other side of the room made a dismissive gesture. The Vulcan Collective recognizes no ancient bloodlines. This changes nothing about established territorial agreements. The hell it doesn't, shouted a delegate from the Canthry Federation. If the protocols are active, then all First Concordat infrastructure defaults to genetic authority. That includes the jump gates in Vulcan space. You think we'll just hand over strategic assets because some human has fancy DNA? The room erupted. Species that had been at peace for decades suddenly found old grudges resurfacing. Because everyone understood what this meant. The First Concordat had built everything. And apparently, they'd programmed it all to recognize their descendants. Jake tried to back toward the door, but more aliens kept arriving. A delegation from the Shardborn Collective brought glowing crystals they claimed were ancient royal artifacts. A representative from the Outer Rim Alliance wanted to discuss protection arrangements. 3 different groups tried to offer him marriage contracts with their leaders' daughters. That's when Ambassador Daniel Torres arrived. He was human, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He pushed through the crowd of aliens with a team of 5 other humans behind him, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps. Jake Thompson, he called out. Jake's head snapped around. Finally, someone from Earth. Someone who might actually help. Yes. Yeah, that's me. Please tell me you're here to make this stop. Daniel reached him and lowered his voice. I wish I could. We've got a situation. Earth's government has been in emergency sessions for the last 18 hours. Nobody knows what to do. What do you mean? Just tell everyone this is a mistake. I'm not special. I'm just a regular guy. That's the problem. You're not. Daniel pulled out a data tablet and showed Jake a genetic analysis. After we heard about your test, we started running scans on other humans. Random samples from Earth, from colonies, from ships. Jake, it's not just you. Every human carries these markers. Some stronger than others, but they're in all of us. Jake felt the room spinning. What? The First Concordat didn't just send their royal family to Earth. They sent thousands of people. And they all had children with the native population. After 10,000 years of isolation, humans didn't just descend from the First Concordat, with their concentrated genetic legacy. The bloodline didn't dilute on Earth. It strengthened. One of the other diplomats, a woman named Patricia Cole, stepped closer. There's more. We've been analyzing the protocols that activated when you were tested. They're not just in the station's systems. They're in everything the First Concordat built. Every jump gate, every communication relay, every defense grid. And they all have the same basic instruction: recognize genetic authority and default to their command. Jake sat down heavily in the nearest chair. You're telling me I can control, what, exactly? Near as we can tell? Potentially everything. You're basically the administrative password to galactic civilization. The arguing in the conference room continued, getting louder. A Vulcan delegate was now standing on the table, shouting about sovereignty. The Trevany ambassador was offering mining rights to 3 entire star systems if Jake would just accept their pledge of loyalty. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. An alarm started blaring. Commander Hayes pressed his hand to his earpiece, listening to a transmission. His face went pale. We've got incoming ships. Fast attack craft, no identification transponders. They're not responding to hails. Whose are they? Daniel demanded. We don't know. But they're armed, and they're heading straight for this section of the station. Patricia grabbed Jake's arm. We need to get you to a secure location. Now. As they rushed toward the door, Jake heard the station's AI speaking calmly over the intercom, warning. Hostile action detected against genetic authority. Activating defensive protocols. All systems prioritizing protection of royal heir. Outside the window, the station's weapons were rotating, targeting the incoming ships. Jake realized with growing horror that a battle was about to start. Over him. Because of him. And this was only the beginning. The attackers didn't waste time. 3 of them materialized inside the conference room using illegal teleportation technology that was banned in every civilized system. 1 second the room was full of arguing diplomats, the next second 3 figures in black combat armor appeared in a shimmer of distorted light. They had plasma rifles. Military grade. The kind that could punch through reinforced steel. Jake saw them turn toward him. Saw the weapons come up. Time seemed to slow down as his brain registered what was happening. This was it. Someone had decided the easiest solution to the air problem was to make sure there was no air. The first attacker fired. Jake should have died. The plasma bolt should have hit him center mass and vaporized most of his chest cavity. That's what plasma weapons did to unarmored targets. Instead, something impossible happened. A shimmer of blue energy materialized in front of Jake. A shield, generated out of nothing, appearing between him and the weapon blast. The plasma bolt hit the shield and dissipated harmlessly. The entire room lit up with blue light. The second and third attackers fired. More shields appeared, blocking each shot. The station's defensive systems had activated automatically, projecting energy barriers to protect him. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that Jake could feel it happening. He could sense the station's systems responding. Not like pressing buttons on a control panel, more like moving his own arm. The shields weren't just protecting him. They were responding to his thoughts, his instincts, his desperate need to not get shot. Commander Hayes dove for cover, shouting into his communicator. Security breach in conference room 7. We have armed hostiles. One of the attackers turned their weapon toward Hayes. Jake didn't think. He just reacted. And the station reacted with him. A burst of energy erupted from the ceiling, striking the attacker's weapon and melting it into slag. The figure stumbled back, dropping the ruined rifle. The other two attackers started to retreat, realizing their ambush had failed spectacularly. Too late. The room's doors slammed shut. The air vents sealed. The attackers were trapped. Within seconds, station security forces were cutting through the door with plasma torches while the defensive systems held the assassins in place with containment fields. Jake stood in the middle of the chaos, his heart hammering, his hands shaking. He could still feel it, the station's systems, humming at the edge of his consciousness like a sixth sense he'd never known he had. What the hell just happened? He whispered. Dr. Rachel Bennett had been thrown to the floor when the shields activated. She pulled herself up, her eyes wide with shock and something else. Recognition. Understanding. The genetic modifications, she said. They're not just markers in your DNA. They're active. Over the next 3 hours, Rachel ran every test she could think of. Blood samples, neural scans, genetic sequencing. Jake sat in the medical bay, still shaking from the adrenaline, while machines hummed and beeped around him. Ambassador Torres stood nearby, talking rapidly into a secure communicator. Yes, Mr. President. I understand. No, sir, he's unharmed. The station systems protected him automatically. But that's not the important part. Sir, you need to hear what Dr. Bennett just told me. Rachel pulled up a holographic display showing Jake's genetic structure next to a baseline human sample. Look at this. These sequences here, they're not natural. They're engineered. Deliberately designed modifications to the human genome. In English, please, Jake said. His head was pounding. Your ancestors didn't just carry royal DNA. They were genetically enhanced. The first concordat modified their own biology. Enhanced reflexes, faster neural processing, the ability to interface directly with their technology. When your life was threatened, when you were in genuine danger, those modifications activated. They woke up. Commander Hayes, who'd been getting his arm bandaged after diving behind a table, spoke up. So he's what, superhuman now? By galactic standards? Yes. Rachel switched the display to show neural scans. His brain is processing information about 30% faster than it was this morning. His reflexes have improved dramatically. And somehow, he can now sense and interact with technology that was built by the first concordat. Not just on this station, potentially anywhere. Hold on, Jake said. You keep saying his like it's just me. The blood test said every human carries these markers. Rachel nodded slowly. That's what worries me. We started running tests on the other humans on the station after your assassination attempt. All 23 of them. They all have the same genetic modifications. Dormant, but present. Dormant until what? Torres asked. Until they're triggered. The modifications seem to activate in response to extreme stress or danger. It's a survival mechanism built into the genetic code. When threatened, the enhancements express themselves. Jake thought about that. Thought about Earth, with its 8 billion humans. All carrying these dormant abilities. All potentially capable of what he'd just done. Does Earth know about this? He asked. Torres looked grim. They're about to. I just sent the report 20 minutes ago. By now, every government on Earth is reading it. Patricia Cole, who'd been quietly observing, finally spoke. This changes everything. Earth isn't just the hiding place of some ancient royal bloodline. It's been a genetic preservation vault for 10,000 years. Every human is a potential heir. Every human can potentially interface with first concordat technology. Which means, Commander Hayes said slowly, humanity just went from being newcomers in the galaxy to being the single most strategically valuable, or threatening, species in known space. Jake put his head in his hands. This morning he'd been a cargo logistics coordinator with a hangover and a fine to pay. Now he was apparently some kind of superhuman heir to an ancient empire, and every human on Earth had the same potential he did. There's something else, Rachel said quietly. She pulled up another display. I've been analyzing the activation pattern in your neural scans. The modifications didn't just enhance your physical abilities. They changed how you perceive technology. You can sense it now, can't you? Not just on the station. Further. Jake closed his eyes. She was right. He could feel the jump gate 3 sectors away. Could sense the communication relays stretching across nearby space. Could almost touch the vast network of first concordat technology that connected the entire galaxy. It was like discovering he'd been deaf his whole life, and suddenly he could hear music playing everywhere. This is insane, he said. It's going to get worse, Torres replied. Those assassins? They were just the first. When word gets out about what you can do, what any human might be able to do, everyone is going to want a piece of this. 3 days after the assassination attempt, Jake called for a meeting. Not a small gathering in a conference room, a full assembly. He wanted every faction, every government, every interested party to hear what he had to say. Station Commander Vrel tried to talk him out of it. This is dangerous. We've identified at least 4 more assassination plots in the last 72 hours. Putting yourself in front of everyone at once is asking for trouble. Good, Jake said. Let them all hear this at the same time. I'm tired of people deciding my future without me. The main assembly hall could hold 3,000 people. It was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from 62 different governments, all crammed together. Some had traveled for days through jump gates to get here. The Trevany Empire sent their crown prince. The Vulcan Collective sent their supreme military commander. Even species that Jake had never heard of sent delegations. They all wanted something from him. The throne. His allegiance. His death. His DNA. Control over Earth. Access to first concordat technology. The list went on and on. Jake stood on the central platform, surrounded by floating holographic cameras that would broadcast this across the galaxy. His hands were sweating. He'd never been comfortable with public speaking. Back home, he'd once had to give a safety presentation to new cargo workers and had nearly thrown up from nervousness. But this was different. This mattered. Ambassador Torres stood nearby with the Earth delegation, looking worried. Rachel Bennett had given him a neural stabilizer to help manage the overwhelming input he was getting from all the technology around him. Commander Hayes had security forces positioned throughout the hall, though everyone knew they'd be useless if another attack came. The station systems would protect Jake whether the guards were there or not. The room fell silent when Jake raised his hand. Every screen in the hall flickered to life, displaying his image. The station's amplification systems automatically adjusted so everyone could hear him clearly, in whatever language they spoke. I know why you're all here, Jake began. His voice echoed through the massive space. You want me to take the throne. Restore the first concordat. Put a king back in charge of the galaxy. The Trevany prince stood and bowed. It is the natural order, your majesty. The rightful. I'm not taking the throne, Jake interrupted. There isn't going to be a throne. The room erupted. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting in a dozen different languages. The Trevany prince looked horrified. The Vulcan commander appeared satisfied, probably thinking this made Jake irrelevant. Others looked confused, angry, or relieved. Jake raised his hand again, and this time, the technology responded in a way that made everyone stop and stare. Every screen in the room displayed his words in text, in real-time translation. Every speaker amplified his voice, drowning out the chaos. The lights dimmed everywhere except around him. The station systems were responding to his will, making sure everyone paid attention. Listen to me, Jake said, and the authority in his voice surprised even himself. I spent the last 3 days learning about my ancestors. About the first concordat. About why they really left. He gestured, and holographic displays appeared throughout the hall, showing ancient text that Rachel had helped him find. The final transmission from the royal palace, 10,000 years ago. They didn't run away because they were weak. They left because they had too much power. Because absolute authority was corrupting them. They abandoned the galaxy so their descendants would learn to be ordinary people first. To understand struggle, humility, what it means to live without power. The Canthari delegate spoke up. But you have power now. The technology responds to you. Why not use it to restore order? Because that's exactly what they didn't want, Jake said. I've spent 3 days connected to the first Concordat systems. I can feel the network they built. The jump gates, the relays, everything. And you know what else I found? Instructions. Messages left behind in the deepest code, where nobody's looked in thousands of years. New displays appeared, showing programming code that slowly translated itself into readable text. Rachel had helped him find this buried in the station's core systems just yesterday. They didn't leave genetic locks to enforce a monarchy. They left them to make sure the technology could only be fully controlled by people who'd learned not to use that control. The whole point was to create a fail-safe. Power that would only activate when the bloodline had spent enough generations being powerless. When they'd learned the hard way what it means to be on the receiving end of authority. Commander Hayes stepped forward. What are you proposing? I'm proposing we reprogram everything. Use my access to change the system. No more genetic authority. No more one person controlling galactic infrastructure. We distribute it. Make it responsive to consensus, not bloodlines. The Vulcan commander laughed harshly. And you expect us to believe you'll give up this power voluntarily? No one does that. That's exactly why I have to do it, Jake said. Because if I don't, I become what the first Concordat was running from. I become the problem. The Trevany prince looked devastated. But the ancient ways, the proper order. The proper order collapsed 10,000 years ago because it didn't work, Jake replied. My ancestors figured that out. Took them long enough, but they got there eventually. I'm not going to repeat their mistakes. Ambassador Torres stepped up beside Jake. Earth supports this decision. We're prepared to share the genetic legacy. We'll help reprogram the systems. But there will be conditions. Safeguards. This can't be rushed. It's going to take months, Jake admitted. Maybe years. Reprogramming everything the first Concordat built isn't simple. But I can do it. I can feel how the code works now. It's like learning to read a language I didn't know I spoke. Some of us will oppose this, the Vulcan commander said flatly. I know, Jake said. But here's the thing, I already have the access. The question isn't whether this is going to happen. The question is whether we do it cooperatively or whether I have to force it. And I really don't want to force it.